afternoon. How's everybody? Excellent, excellent. Look at all those cameras turning on. That's so spectacular. See your shining faces. All righty, what a good day, huh? Not a bad way to start week 6. Not bad at all. All righty, so let's a couple of Steve, you want to start off with your winners?
Yes, I do. Be happy to. Shift books, guys, new and shiny. They go to Carla Morera in Ridgefield and Jackie Yeep in Stanford. So make sure you get your books. Guys, I have books sitting here. 1, 2, 3, now 4. I have 4 books sitting here. You guys haven't picked them up. So those of you that have won, I'm going to send a reminder emails. Please come and get your books, okay?
Come on, you don't have anything else to do. Get in the car and drive to the office, pick up your book. It'll be nice to get out into the sunshine or the rain shine, as the case actually is today. All righty, so congratulations to those shift winners. Keep on keeping on the, oh, John, good, you picked up yours. That's spectacular. See, John was out of the house today, so we know he at least got dressed because he had to get out of the car and walk to the front of the building to get it. So that's always good news.
Sweatpants, that's about it though.
Well, there you go. So I do want to give just a quick 3-minute unemployment, I know, please don't groan, unemployment update, because I'm finding that a lot of you are asking the same questions, and so it's easier sometimes to just spend 2 or 3 minutes on a call like this to address it globally. And so here's the issue with unemployment. February. What month are we in? April 30th. So that is, I think, Thursday or Friday, is when the federal portal for unemployment benefits is supposed to open. Now, don't hold me to that, because that's just what I'm being told from Connecticut Department of Labor. And yet that is when the federal portal is supposed to open. This week is also when some of the federal add-on money is supposed to start showing up in claims. Now, it's unclear whether or not it'll show up in a claim that you have with the state that's paid you $0 at the state level without doing something with the federal portal later this week. That's the piece that still remains unclear. Right now, we're told don't go, if you've already done it on the state site, don't go and redo it on the federal site. However, stay tuned, we're still getting more information on that. Here's the bigger issue. Many of you who went ahead and did file received emails saying, congratulations, you're in the temporary shutdown pool of funds and money and all this good stuff. For most of you, unless you are very specifically like in an S Corp where you're actually an employee of your own company, most of you are still ineligible for state benefits. So regardless of what they're sending you, regardless of what it says, at some point what comes back around is a little notice that says, we went and looked at your eligible earnings from last year, and your eligible earnings are 0. Right? So some of you are nodding your heads in agreement with what I'm saying, because that's what you've received. So when your eligible earnings are 0 because you're an independent contractor, that means your benefits are based on a percentage of that 0, and a percentage of 0 is still 0, right? So again, all along we've been saying, don't count on, you're not eligible for state unemployment funds. So regardless of what they're telling you, at some point it kind of comes back around and it ends up netting you 0. You are eligible for some of the federal funds that should start this or next week. Stay tuned for more information on that. I don't want there to be confusion around the state unemployment, because most of you will receive nothing from state unemployment because you're ultimately ineligible. And because you're ineligible, that's why you're struggling answering the questions that it's asking you to answer when you're asked to go and file your weekly claim, because it doesn't ask you the right questions. It asks questions of W-2 employees. So when it asks you, did you work and you're struggling to say, okay, well, I did work. I showed buyers this week. Well, that's not what they're talking about, right? They're talking about a W-2 employee. When they work, they get paid. When you work, you don't necessarily get paid. So the system itself is not designed for you, which is why you're struggling answering those questions. Does that make sense kind of globally, what I just said? Okay, cool. So for those of you who are kind of plugging away, pushing the buttons and trying to just kind of figuring it out, that's the struggle that you're having. And it's not your struggle. It's a struggle with the system. You're being asked to use a system that wasn't designed for you. So give it another couple of days and we should be able to flip over into a system that will be designed for you. And most of this should become much clearer. Okay, I've been asked to issue another reminder about .loop going away in the next couple of weeks. So please know that you need to plug into any and all trainings that are offered, which are heavy this week, by the way. Check out the calendar, make sure that you're in those classes. As of May 1st, we will only accept transactions through command, no longer through .loop. You will have .loop for a smidge longer beyond May the 1st to use for a digital signature tool until we flip over into DocuSign, probably the second week or so of May. But as of May 1st, so as of whatever that day is, Monday maybe, you do have to know how to upload your documents for your transactions and your listings inside of command. So if you don't know how to do that, please make sure that you take advantage of all of the opportunities to learn how to do that this week, because we're now at that moment in time where .loop will sunset. I've also been asked to just remind you, you all received an email earlier about the opportunity for Pivot, right? Pivot is going to be starting in May, on May the 5th, and that is a month-long program. It goes through the entire month of May, prepping you on the 4 pillars of a shifted market that Gary wrote about. And so that whole program is designed to address those 4 pillars, which I outlined in that email. Do remember that if you are struggling, that there is a cost for that. That program is run by Keller Williams Realty International. And so the program cost for that is $99 for the month. That includes all 8 sessions plus 8 additional coaching opportunities in separate off-session coaching segments for you. So it's a total of 16 sessions throughout the month of May to keep us focused and pointing forward on finding and writing business for the summer, right? I challenged you this morning to really make sure that you are fighting for your income for the summer, because that is when, if any of us are going to struggle, either individually or as a team, that's when we're going to struggle. We're going to struggle June, July, and August, right? Because of the written business now. So my thought for you is fight for your income by joining this Pivot session. I don't know a ton about it, except that I've heard really good things, and it's based on Gary's 4 pillars. So I'm not sure how it could be bad.
Rick.
The cost is $99, and we do have a reimbursement program for you. Again, read the email for the details, but basically you have to show up and you have to participate in the whole program and run 2 command ads during the month of May, and then ask for the reimbursement, right? If you ask for the reimbursement and you have fulfilled those other 2 requirements, we will write you a check for $99 out of your very next closing. And so it ends up being free to you. The reason we're asking you to ask for the reimbursement is that there are some of you who don't necessarily need the $99 reimbursement. And so we're asking you to make a choice. You can either choose to ask for that reimbursement as well, or you can choose to leave those funds in that pool to help others who really do need it. So it is not an automatic reimbursement program. It is, there are a couple of things you need to do, and one of them is ask for it if you truly need it. Any questions, comments, concerns on that? Steve, did you have something additional?
No, I just shared it in the chat room that there was over 18,000 registered for Bold Pivot, and it's nearly 20,000 as of today.
Wow. So there's at least some interest there. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited about it. And if you notice, I call it just pivot because that's more exciting to me. So we're calling it pivot in our market centers. Just in case you're bolded out, right? It's just called pivot. All righty. So, and the registration link is in that email. So go ahead and register for that if you would. The last thing I have for you before we dive into questions, well, maybe we'll dive into questions and then I'll throw out my last thing and then we'll move on to Ignite. Any specific questions that you have from transactions, or let me just check the, okay, let me answer this question and then I'll go to additional ones. Yeah, sorry guys, my chat wasn't open. So when I moved on from unemployment, I didn't see that was here. Okay, so do we need to reply to that letter within 21 days? I don't know what letter you're speaking of, Kathleen. If you send it to me, I'm happy to read it with you and help you out with that. Do we apply for federal or do we file for PPP? File for federal, because if you didn't apply for PPP today, it's unlikely there are going to be funds left for you by the time you do apply. Anyway, I mean, you can do either. You're eligible for both. So maybe go ahead and find, I sent something out over the weekend to find bankers or credit unions that would accept those applications for the PPP. You can certainly apply for that. My concern is that if you weren't ready today for that second round of money, that you may be waiting for a third round if they approve a third round. And yet, it certainly is worth the opportunity. I received a $1,000 grant from the EIDL today. I applied for 10,000, but they turned it into 1,000 because they were all running out of money, right? And so that's on my investment property business. Woohoo! But hey, I'll take it, right? And so the money that was kind of jammed up did start to flow again at 10:30 this morning when they officially released those funds. So minimally, if you're concerned about income moving forward, and you don't have closings on the books and you haven't had closings, that federal side unemployment is likely faster for you than a PPP. Okay. Herm is asking the health questionnaire. Yes, we're almost done with that. I didn't announce yet last week that we were going to be updating those forms. They're not quite finished. But we are working on that, so give us another 24, maybe 48 hours, and they'll be taken care of.
Hey, Rick, I have a huge announcement, if I could speak now. So, huge yes from Matt Levchenko, our favorite Bold coach. For those who register for Bold, during Bold in the month of May, he'll do a 30-minute session with us, all the Bold attendees, every week. So we'll do the 2 sessions of Bold, and then we have Matt for a half hour, keeping us on track every week through Bold. So that's huge, huge motivation.
Don't you mean pivot?
Pivot, yes.
So yeah, that'd be awesome. So we're going to have, regardless of what we have on the online calls, we do have Matt as our personal follow-up, which is awesome. And Mike Tromba is asking, did you have to do anything to get the EIDL? Yes. If your bank said it's direct, there's no additional application, they're incorrect about that. Where's Mike? I don't see him. The quick answer to your question is you go on the SBA.gov site and file an application there. Now, understand that until the SBA has cleared all of the last round's EIDL applications, they will not open the application process again for this round, which could mean that this round of money is used up on last round's applications before they open it up again. So go to SBA.gov, click through to the EIDL and see. I did it a couple of times today just to check, and it still wasn't open because they're still processing the old applications.
Hey, Rick.
Yes.
Hi, that was me, Kim. Sorry, Mike's name there. I did apply way back then. I did the EIDL the first time you brought it up back many weeks ago. So I called my bank just to double check there wasn't anything additional to do.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, so I haven't been funded and I haven't heard anything. I didn't
Yeah,
know if there was,
so you're in the queue. I know
Okay.
you did it after me, and I
Yeah.
just received mine literally this morning. So
I also got
you know,
mine this morning.
Oh,
see,
okay.
there you go. And Debbie got hers this morning. Jody got hers this morning, right? So
Oh,
so
great.
we've got a bunch of people. So hang in there.
Okay.
It's coming. You know, like Christmas.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Just don't hold your breath, Kim.
Yeah, okay.
All right. So any other questions before we finish up with one last thing today? Nothing from transactions, nothing from issues. That's good. This is like 2 or 3 days in a row with no real questions or issues. Woohoo! It's like we're almost back to normal. So spectacular. All right, so I did want to just end today with one last thing, and that
I have
is,
a question.
yes, Lise.
I just wanted to ask you about the renewal of the licenses. I know that they're due at the end of the month, and I was wondering, are we going to be getting anything in the mail, or how is that all going to work for us? Because normally they just give it to us in the office. I mean, I know we have to take all our classes and be ready by the end of May.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we haven't, I don't think MCAs, if you're on the call, we haven't received any packages or anything from Hartford with license renewal paperwork, have we? Deb or Lisa?
I don't know if they're on, but I can tell you it hasn't been in the mail. If that's
Okay.
what we're looking.
So my guess, Lisa, is that it's going to just all be online. I will find out if we're going to get anything from them, because you're right. We usually do get a solo piece of paper that speaks to the renewal. My guess is that they're doing everything online. I will verify that and come back to you tomorrow with that. Alice, do you have info on that?
I received an email with the renewal. Told me to go online to renewal.
For Connecticut?
Yes.
Okay, so they must be doing, so Alice is F, so she's Farina, so Gomberg, you're next.
I got mine too, and I got it on April 5th.
Uh-oh.
I got mine too, Fiona here.
Well, that's Henry and Porter, so now you're screwed.
Email from me. Email from me.
I'm R, and I received mine a while ago.
Okay, so here's the good news. If Jen Henry, if you would send me the email, forward me the email that you received, so I can just kind of crib some of the information on it, not your personal info, but the online information, and put that out to everybody, that would be spectacular. I appreciate that, and we'll get that out to everyone. Right, and thank you also for the reminder, Lisa, because the other thing to remind yourselves is you do have to have all of your CE done by the end of May. There is no grace period on that. There is no delay because you can do it all online. So do watch for opportunities to take those classes. If you haven't done that, think about getting some done this weekend and perhaps the rest done the following weekend. No, the office is not currently going to be offering any CE. We almost always bring people in each year, but since we don't have a venue for them to do that with, we are not planning on it right now. So go to those online vendors and see what you can grab.
Rick, I don't have any specifics on this, but I have actually been talking to Karina about trying to put together something that we can do via Zoom or go to webinar or something like that, because she does have the ability to do online CE now. So I am trying to work with her on that, but nothing finalized yet.
Yeah, so the answer is we may be able to line something up. I wouldn't wait for us to do our thing though. I would go on and get it done, and if you're in a pinch and we can work something out in the last moments, we can certainly grab that for you. All right.
Hey, Rick.
Yeah.
I think it's Kim who pointed out that MLS dues are due Thursday. That's another reminder.
Yes. So tons of different ways for you to spend your money this week and the following weeks. MLS dues, CE classes, and then renewing your license. But hey, you know what? That's what it takes to be in business, right? So let's climb on and get that stuff taken care of. No, the site is not open for federal applications yet. Probably end of week or early next week. All right. So last thing, if there's no more questions. I mentioned this morning that that your challenge is to fight for your income for the summer. And there are two ways I want you to fight. Listing agents, I want you to fight to unlock the dollars that are currently stuck in your unsold listings. And we're just gonna give you a quick tool before we finish today to help you do that. And then tomorrow I'll talk a little bit about a tool to help your buyers with the unlocked income in your buyers who are not currently buying. So let me just share this with you. Anyone who has any inventory right now, do you work from something like this, like an inventory pricing chart, where you list each of your addresses, and then you simply go through what is the current price, when was it last reduced? This is the most important piece right here. What is the price that will cause it to sell? Not what is the price that I think I can get, not what is the price that I'm not afraid to ask for. What is the price that will cause it to sell? Do the work, look at the comps, understand the market, and you will come up with a price that you know will cause that property to sell. And then I want you to understand exactly what the differential is between the price that will cause it to sell and the current price, so that you know what you're asking for. And then I want you to give yourself a deadline. And that is the deadline to get that reduction done. Now, if you'll notice, today is the 27th of April. So all of these dates are this week. You need to give yourself a deadline of this week to get these prices reduced, if in fact, these are the dates that they were last reduced. Notice the only one that's a little different is this one. Why is this one a little different? Because it was only reduced a couple of days ago, right? And so what we know up here is we reduce every 21 to 30 days until the property is sold. And so this just gives you a plan to make sure that you are taking action when you need to take action on your current inventory. And then of course, this last line here, do I have an appointment? If the answer is no to do I have an appointment, like here, you don't have an appointment and it's 5:15. Here you don't have an appointment and it's 5:01. So this is the very next phone call you're going to make when we get off of this call, to make sure that you set an appointment with the owners of 456 Sycamore to have a conversation about getting their home sold based on a price that will actually cause it to sell instead of where they currently are. I also would encourage you, if you have no's over here, even if it's 5:15, you need to have an appointment for the week before to be discussing what's going to happen, right? So your appointment should already be set here for 5:10, 5:11, 5:12, something like that, to make sure that you have some time for someone to cancel and rebook, right? Don't wait until 5:15 to then start calling so that you get an appointment the following week and then they cancel and now you're another week out. Now you're 5 or 6 weeks later than this 4/21, right? This is not an opinion, by the way. This is fact. This is how real estate works, right? You reduce the properties every 21 to 30 days until they're sold. I know people like to think that that's an opinion, but it's not an opinion. It is how real estate works. And so I offer to you this chart to give you a tool to simply track all of your inventory and make sure that you have appointments to have conversations about what has to happen next. Somebody always asks what this is, right? And what this is this, you can see that the current price is $675 and the price that will cause it to sell has been determined to be $639. However, what I'm pretty certain I can do with the sellers is $650, because they're really tough sellers, right? And this is a big jump, right? Maybe not percentage wise, but it feels like a big jump to the sellers. So I'm gonna go and push for this $639, but the minimum to reduce here is to $650. right? And just give yourself that outline so that you know what it is you're going to be talking about going in. Does that make sense to everybody? Questions, comments, concerns on it? Somebody please unmute and say, gee, that's a great tool. That's awesome. We're going to use it starting tomorrow.
It's a great tool.
Great.
Great tool.
Brilliant tool.
Good job.
I think it's so awesome.
Fabulous.
Love it.
I posted a question.
So here's the thing. I didn't ask you to unmute to make me feel good about a stupid little Excel thing that I typed. I wanted to hear from you because I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that you're working your inventory the same way that we're discussing it here, right? That you look at that and say, yeah, how else would one do it? How else would one address their sellers? Because if you're really going to take a stand for your income in June, July, and August, I'll tell you what I used to do. Let me just go back to that really quick. What time is it? Oh yeah, we still have time, good. What I used to do was this. I used to do, set up a little formula right here. Well, no, that didn't work right. Hold on. Oops. Right? And so this then is the total commission that's locked inside of my unsold inventory, right? So for those of you who are struggling with trying to figure out how you're going to pay the bills next month and you have inventory, are you looking at this every day and saying, okay, I have $49,000 of income right there. I just have to unlock it. For those of you who are not having these conversations every 21 to 30 days with your sellers, I think this is a number that you need to really focus on. Ask yourself how important it is to unlock that commission income for yourselves, and perhaps that will give you more of a push to have these conversations. Yes? Okay. Silva asks, how do you determine the price that will cause it to sell? The same way you worked with the initial listing price. You find the best 3 sold comps and then place it within a list of actives. It's no different than that, right? Right, so Fiona says, I'm having trouble getting my folks to reduce. They believe that people fleeing New York, the market will become hot. So remember, I mentioned this last week, I think. The last time something happened in New York and the people fled New York, it took 3 years for all of that fleeing to occur. It doesn't mean that no one left for 3 years, but people aren't running out of New York as of June the 1st. That's not the way it's going to happen. And you need to be really clear with them that the precedent here with 9/11 says we did see an increase of people coming out of New York over normal, except it was spread out over 3 years. So are you willing to wait 3 years for the fleeing to occur? And what do you think that means in terms of hot, medium, or cold markets if no one's fleeing immediately, if it's spread out over 3 years? Do you think there's all of a sudden a spike? Not what we see typically, not what we see. And we're not expecting it this time around either, right? Not expecting it again. Okay, so John, I'm not. So I'm going to have to. We're out of time, but I'm not quite sure I understand the comment about it's not the same script. Market value is always market value. It's 3 sold comps and where you are excuse me, in respect to the competition. So if I'm speaking.
No, I hit the send button before I finished the statement, but it's not going against. It was actually for. So I just
got it.
I was
so it is the
actually
same
answering Fiona I should have done it privately. So I apologize.
Got it. No worries. I should have known because there was no like question mark at the end. So I should have just.
Yeah, it got all messed up real fast.
No worries. No worries. All right, guys. So with that, have a spectacular afternoon. Marvin, I will call you on my drive home tonight and answer your question. If you need me, you know where to find me. For those of you hanging out for Ignite, we will start in just about 1 minute. Have a lovely evening, and we'll see you at 9 o'clock tomorrow. All righty. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, still, continued. I love it. I love that at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we still have 40 to 50 people plugging in on this stuff. That is so spectacular. Okay, so let's do this. Tell me a little bit about ahas from Friday. We started our scripts on Friday, our buyer consultation scripts, and spent most of our time working with the top 5 must-have list as well as the needs analysis. Any ahas from any of that? Questions on it?
We need to do less talking and more listening.
I'll tell you what. Go ahead, Chris.
We need to shut up.
Yeah. Most of us could stand a dose of that most of the time. That's something I continue to learn over and over and over and over and over again. Like less is more, less is more, less is more, less is more, less is more. What else?
Rick, I wondered if it might be better when we're bringing up the 3 points, like during the consultation, that hopefully the family will like them, the agent, and their presentation, and hire them. That was, I think, the first thing. I think that should be the last thing. Am I making myself clearer now?
So you're talking about the setting the stage step, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
And where we go through that, you know, there are 3 options that will come out of this meeting.
Mm-hmm.
1, you'll hire me as your agent. 2, in very rare events, I may choose not to hire you as the 3rd one. I'm blanking on the 2nd one right now. But I think we should end with the one that says, you'll hire me. So that's the last thing they hear.
Sure, you can certainly change them up. I think the reason it's written that way is that the second one is you may choose not to hire me, right? And
Right.
so that kind of just, I think from a flow perspective, you'll hire me, you won't hire me, or I won't hire you. And again, feel free to jostle them around if that makes better sense to you. I will tell you that again, I would spend more time just practicing things as they're written. I didn't write this, right?
Okay.
And there are pieces that are written here that are written for a reason. I can't give you the psychology necessarily behind why that was written the way it's written, except from a flow perspective, because I see it very much as a yes, no, maybe so type option.
Okay.
And here's the good news. The good news is we still all live in America, and if you want to change it up, you have that right.
Well, thanks.
I would encourage you to learn it and use it the way it's written first, and prove to yourself that it might work better differently, right? So if you're finding that people are not kind of getting it after you've used it for like 100 times, then make that change. But until then, do it the way it's written, because I think what you'll find is that at the end of the day, it probably doesn't much matter what order you use them in, as long as you're communicating that they have options.
Good.
And then you will have practiced it the way it was written anyway, so why change?
Good.
The really important part of that, Caroline, is to make sure you communicate that this is a hiring process. That's the real portion to understand that this is a hiring process and that we're going to make a decision here tonight. If we don't communicate that, that's when we have struggles later on. So Velma, tell me, what was the number one thing that you learned from Friday's class? Which one? Oh, hold on, you're still muted, Velma, hold on. Okay, go for it.
No, I was piggying off of what Chris said. That was the number one thing I learned about speaking these, but also what else? What else? You know, every time you ask a question, go, well, what else? What else?
Yeah, that's a great script, right? Nice short 2-word little script, that what else. I love it. What else, guys? See what I did there? What else?
Actually, Rick, I think my notes from all of last class, I think were like 5 words. It was what else, and qualify and quantify. I think that's all I had written on my page of paper.
Yeah. And you know what? If you took nothing away from Friday, other than that, then it was worth your time, right? Because those are powerful, powerful phrases and powerful reminders about the question asking that we're diving into. Remember, there is. I would encourage you to take the word presentation. I said this on the list side last week. I'll say it on the buy side. Never do a presentation ever again. Do consultations. Always make sure that you're consulting with people. Always make sure that you're asking questions. A presentation is all about you talking, right? It's like Carol Merrill. Here's all the fun stuff. A consultation is 2 business people sitting down and one of them consulting someone through a process, asking great questions to elicit great answers, right? 2 very different processes and 2 very different results. What else? A couple more. Go ahead, John.
Hey, Rick. I thought it was, I'd rather ask 20 questions now than show you 20 homes.
Yeah, indeed. And that is so true, right? For those of you who have ever spent time with buyers, if you can help them help themselves make better, faster, clearer decisions, everybody wins. Everybody wins. And it is so, so, so clear. If you've never spent a whole lot of time with buyers, try it both ways. You'll see which one you like better. You'll only try it one time. right, by not having a consult. And you'll see how you bang your head against the wall. What else? One or two more. Any ahas about the top 5 must-have list? Or the form? Not a one? Well, I'll tell you my aha from the top 5 must-have list. First and foremost, having it and using it, I think, is always an aha. Because I think oftentimes we say, oh yeah, I do that, except you don't. Because then when I ask what top 5 must-have form you actually use, you say, well, I don't really have a form. Okay, well then you're not using it, right? So the actual use of the top 5 must-have list with an actual document should be an aha. Like if I don't have a form that says top 5 must-haves on it, I'm missing a document on the buy side of my business. The other aha I have about this document is what it does for us and for them. Right, remember I said, if you read through the top, it outlines the idea not only of sacrifice, but of holding each other, buyers and agent, accountable to making offers on properties that fit their criteria. Right, that line at the top that says, let's agree that when we find a house that's like 90 to 95% that has your top 5 must-haves, it will prompt discussion about making an offer. If you don't say that during the consultation, you haven't set the expectation for them that that's the path we're going to go down. And almost as importantly, if not more importantly, you haven't set the expectation for yourself, which then gives you an out. You're not holding yourself accountable to what you said to them. And for many of you who feel like you don't ever want to be pushy, you'd rather not say anything than prompt a discussion about making an offer, even if it's not the best, even if it's not the right house for them. They'll tell you if it's not the right house, right? But how will you know unless you ask the question? Remember, the whole purpose here is for you to be directive, and being directive is stopping and verifying. So I'm curious, Chris, is this a house you think you want to purchase? And then Chris can say yes, no, or maybe so. And if it's yes, great, let's go back to the office and write it up. If it's no, great, tell me why, tell me what it's missing, so that we make sure we don't hit another house like this again. And if it's maybe so, well, let's talk about that. What's the maybe so portion? On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being you'll buy it and pay more than asking for it right now, and 1 being you never want to even drive up the street again, where does it fall? And no matter what Chris says, the follow-up script to that is, and what would make it a 10? So Chris says it's a 7. Great, what would make it a 10? Now we're isolating what it's missing. If he says it's a 2, well, then the list might be longer. Right? And there may be some that Chris sees when you say what would make it a 10, that he says, I think the only thing that would make this house a 10 for me is a match and kindling. And perhaps a call to the fire department, right? And we start all over again. Okay, well, that's pretty clear, right? See, I can work with clarity. I can work with all of those responses. If you're not constantly asking for that kind of feedback from the buyers, you have nothing to work with, which gives them nothing to work with, which only frustrates both parties as we keep seeing house after house after house after house after house. You see how that works, right? You're irritating them and they're irritating you, but we're not having a conversation about the irritation to just solve the irritation issue, right? All righty. Okay, so good ahas, good ahas. Did anyone practice the needs analysis over the weekend? Say it again, Dee.
I'd like to add one that's come up when I use this.
Yes.
And that's with couples. When you go through the must-haves,
yeah,
sometimes it brings out the differences and/or where they have to come together on what their must-haves are.
Yeah, isn't that a true statement, right? Has anyone ever worked with couples where the must-haves are a little bit different for each of them?
And we kind of joke about it, and we have some fun with it, because I'll say something like, we have 5 must-haves. I'll tell you what, I'll give you 3 and you 3. And then we joke and we have some fun and see where it goes.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And if you already know that you don't like one of them, you give that person the 2 and give the person that is already making you smile the 3.
There you go.
You absolutely play favorites with that every single time. Right, but it is so true, and it's a really valid point, Dee. Thank you for bringing it up, because it's a helpful tool to help more than one person get on the same page, right? Just because they're married doesn't mean they have agreement about the house they want to purchase, right? That would be a lovely thing. It rarely happens.
Saves a lot of time.
Oh, indeed, indeed, right? And it saves, again, you're consulting people to make better business decisions. And the better business decision is for us to sit together in the office or via Zoom, however you're going to do that, and argue about this now, so that we aren't standing in a house and one side of the couple is saying, I love this, and the other one's got a grumpy puss on, right? Having the argument then, because they already know what the concessions are going to be, because you walked them through, you helped them through that process beforehand. It always gets exacerbated and more emotional when someone's then standing in a house, right? Because now you're starting to fall in love. And the other person's thinking, okay, I can see you're falling in love, and I don't know why you would fall in love here. But if you've already had that conversation, instead of having it have a drama in the living room of this property, you end up getting to go back to, well, if you remember, we had this conversation, right? We talked about who makes the tiebreaker. We talked about which one of these 5 must-haves would be the tiebreaker if we needed one, right? And it's the gorgeous fireplace in the living room. And so I'm curious, do you both agree that this is like an absolutely awesome fireplace in the living room that meets all of your needs for what you would use a fireplace in the living room for? Well, yeah, I guess so. Great, tie broken. Let's go back to the office and write up an offer. You see how you utilize that as a tool? Trust those of us who have been with buyers more often than we care to even admit at this point, right? These are the things that come up, and it's less about your skill as a real estate agent and more about your skill as a consultant to help them agree on issues like that. That's not really real estating. That's consulting. Right? The real estate skills kick in when they are now on the same page and decide, yes, let's go back and make an offer, right? Because now you're going to go and use all your real estate skills. But consulting skills are as important, if not more important, than any other skill that you might bring to the table. Make sense? So if you haven't practiced or rehearsed just a needs analysis over the weekend, or even if you did, I'd like you to find some time between now and Wednesday, and yes, we will meet Wednesday. Wednesday is our last class. Find time between now and Wednesday with somebody who's, if you have the gallery view, just like look up, look down, do your Brady Bunch back and forth, see who might be next to you, and figure out either in chat boxes or via text, just find a partner. Or if you're not going to use somebody who's in class, find somebody in your house. Find someone to just practice this on, because I want you to go through the needs analysis at least twice between now and Wednesday, right? That means at least once Tuesday and at least once Wednesday, so you're starting to build the habit of conducting these consultations. Is that a deal? Yes? All righty then. All right, so let's do this. I want to bring I do want to just have a quick conversation around financing your properties. And so we're going to talk about sharing your value proposition and educating your buyers while Karen readies herself. So give me 5 minutes, Karen. And then I want to give you over to Karen for a smidge, and then we're going to dive right back in. So hold on. Yeah, don't think we're done with the buyer consultation. Karen's going to talk to you for a smidge, and then we're going to dive back in and hit the most important piece, which is close for the agreement. And how we're going to do that is we're going to work through the script on closing for the agreement, and then take a look at the agreement and then see how it overlays. Because the one overlays on top of the other really quite beautifully, so that you don't necessarily have to sit and go line by line with your buyers through the actual contract, right? And then we will end with some scripts to help you secure properties quickly with your buyers. And then we will meet for our last time on Wednesday and go through the anatomy of a buyer transaction. So that's kind of how the next couple of hours will go. An hour tonight and then an hour and a half on Wednesday. So as Karen's writing herself, turn quickly to step number 3 and 4, which are your next pages, which is share your value proposition and educate your buyers. I am not going to go through these with you. I am instead going to suggest that you take a look at those on your own and figure out exactly what your pieces of your value what the pieces of your value proposition are. I've given you some ideas here, but you may have different items to focus on in your value proposition to buyers. And so I want you to read through the value proposition and say, okay, well, so these are good. I also think I'm going to be offering this, or I think I'm going to excel at this over here, so I'm going to punch that a little bit more. And then I want you to read through educate your buyers. And educate your buyers is just kind of a step-by-step of here's what it looks like. Here's how this is done. And that's not just for first-time home buyers, by the way, because people tend to purchase the house they live in once every how many years?
7.
Right? So 7 to 10, once every 7 to 10 years. So don't assume that everyone just remembers the process. You do this every day, they do not, right? So having a conversation about that process is really important. Now, here's the reason we're not going to just read through these and insert them into this part of the process. Most of the time, I didn't necessarily utilize these conversations in the consultation. Most times I moved from the needs analysis right to close for the agreement, and then we were heading out to see property. Now remember, we talked about whether or not we're going to start changing that up and having the consultation prior to seeing property. I still think I would work things the same way. And that is using share your value proposition and educate your buyers as car talk. Now I know we're not putting buyers in our cars today, right? And yet I'm assuming at some point we will still go back to putting buyers in our cars. And if we don't, I still think having communication with your buyers while you're driving from house to house is important. So if you're not putting buyers in your car, connecting with them on the phone in between houses is not a bad idea to stay connected. And the idea is to utilize the information in share your value proposition and educate your buyers as chunks, as small pieces to bring up in between houses. On your way to the first house, you get to have a little conversation. Hey, remind me, how many houses have you purchased in Connecticut? Well, just the one that we're in now. Excellent. And how long ago was that? Oh, it was 7.5 years ago. Ah, great. Would it be helpful to just do a quick review of the process? I'm curious, what do you remember about radon? I'm curious, what information do you have about buried oil tanks? I'm curious, what do you know about XYZ, right? And so you're having these little mini conversations to cover all of those points When was the last time you had a home inspection? Would it be helpful if we had a quick conversation before we hit the next house as to what that looks like and what you can expect, right? So you're hitting all these little topics to continue educating. And a lot of those topics are written about in those pages that we just turned. Does that make sense to everybody? It saves time in the actual consultation, because you can see that's just a whole lot of this. You doing blah, 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 right? And what we've figured out on Friday was when you are doing less of the talking, they're more engaged, their time is moving faster, and you get through things a whole lot more efficiently. So I would take those two pieces and chop them up and use them as conversation pieces, either at or during home showings, at or before, before or after home showings. If you have a moment of time, if they're in the car with you, in the car, if you're connected, if you're in different cars, doing it that way. Yes? All righty. All right, so Karen, do me a favor. Give us a little conversation around financing today and some of the challenges and some of the opportunities that exist out there to make sure that we're moving in a direction with buyers that makes valid sense.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you and be a part of your Ignite class today. I want to let you know about some of the changes. I don't know if all of you have been involved in all of the calls we've done, but just to give you some highlights on some of the changes. For every client that you have us talk to, or you have talked to any mortgage financial person, please have them pre-qualified before you take them anywhere, because it's so important. We've had a lot of changes in the business over the last 30 days, and they've been fast and furious, and we are going back, and I suggest that you do the same to every client that you are speaking with or thinking of selling a home to make sure that they still qualify for the financing that they were looking for. Let's make sure they all have jobs, are all being paid the same that they were, are all doing the same types of jobs or similar to the jobs that they were doing, so that we know that they're getting paid. Some people are losing their overtime. Some people are losing some of their commissions. It does impact their ability to buy because it impacts their income. And when the lenders are still looking at the 4 basics, income to make sure that you can handle the new debt, savings to see what you have for down payment, what money do you have for closing, and reserves have never been more important. And when I say reserves, I mean money that you will have left over in your bank accounts when the transaction closes. So it used to be just either $0 left up to a couple of months. Now lenders are looking for sometimes up to 6 months. That doesn't, and I'm not saying at all that lending has gone away, because it hasn't. We have 30 different lenders that we work with. So we still have the ability to do 3% down, 5% down, 10% down, 15, 20, whatever you like. Several realtors called me today to say, I heard I need 25% down before their clients can buy. That is not true. Can you buy at every price range for 3% down? No, but you can buy, up to $510,000 in a loan amount with 3% down. Same 5% down, 3.5% down, up to $601,000. It is out there. Your clients need to be prepared. I'm sending some clients also to credit repair, because the lender looks at income credit. They believe that if you pay your other creditors on time, you will pay them on time. It's the same basics. They look at income, savings, credit, debt. They want to make sure you're not taking on more than you can handle right now. It's the same 4 pieces of information that you would want if you were going to lend somebody $1,000, $100,000, $500,000, $1 million. It all applies. Please don't think that all of the jumbo financing has gone away. It hasn't. We still have a great few lenders for 90% financing to $1 million. That means you can get a loan for $1 million with just 10% down. It's really an incredible product. It does have mortgage insurance. It's with an adjustable rate mortgage. The rate is as low as 3 1/8%. It's a fabulous product. So there is lots of financing out there. Please don't be scared of it. Don't let your clients be scared of it. Anybody have any questions? Okay. I sent out a packet, or I had Adonis and Maria was nice enough to send out a packet of information to you so that you could follow along with what I'm doing. I put in a welcome checklist that goes over the basics that the lender is looking at. Basically, it's pay stubs, W-2s, 1099s, tax returns if you're self-employed, bank statements. They just want to find out where the income and the savings are coming from so that your client can buy. Underwriters are being very, very, very thorough. They ask a lot of questions, and we want to make sure that we have the answers and that we've already looked at everything up front so that once you do find a home and they sign that purchase agreement, that it goes through underwriting pretty quickly. I sent a sheet out about closing costs. Did everybody get it? There's one sheet there. It looks like this. I wish I could put it on my screen, but I cannot right now. But above, on the top of this worksheet, it says fees worksheet. Should your clients ask you, how much do I need for closing? My quick response is 2.5% of the purchase price. So if you're buying for a $500,000 home, typically you'll need $12,000, $13,000, and that encompasses everything. Your appraisal, credit, underwriting, your attorney, everything that your attorney does. They do a title search, they get title insurance, they record with the town, and of course they do the closing. In addition to that, you'll need interest from the date that you close to the end of the month. That's your mortgage payment to the new lender when you close. You'll also need to pay taxes to the town, or you will reimburse the seller for taxes they have prepaid. In addition to that, the lender can take up to 2 months of escrow or cushion in your account so that there's always money in the account that's yours to pay for taxes and insurance. They certainly don't want to use their money. And then you prepay, of course, the home insurance for 1 year. Any questions about any of that? If you have a situation that you want to discuss with me, please feel free. You know, after the call tomorrow, or if you have a question now. You guys are geniuses. I know you've heard me say all of this before, but it's part of Ignite, and we just wanted to give a refresher so that you would know that yes, financing is available, and that we instill that on all of the buyers that call us. That's a quick one.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Karen, for that. We appreciate it. If you hang out just a smidge, we may have some questions come up. It's early yet. Dinner can wait.
Oh, absolutely.
So Karen said one thing at the very beginning of when she started to speak, and I want to just circle back to it. Do you know that phrase, ready, willing, and able buyer? Well, we want you to not be concerned about ready, willing, and able buyers. We want you to only be really concerned about finding able, ready, and willing buyers. You've got to move that ability portion right to the front of the line, right? That's what Karen was getting at, because people are ready and willing. If they're not able, what is the point, right? And with all that's been occurring in the last 6 weeks or so, their ability, even if they're people that you've been working with for a while, their ability may have changed. So don't assume that when you had a pre-qualification or a pre-approval letter issued on these particular buyers on March the 15th, that they're still okay to purchase the same amount with the same program with the same amount down today, right? I would push them right back to Karen to say, okay, let's review this and make sure that we're still in the same spot. Does that make sense?
Many of them are. You know, a lot of people can work from home, especially with the types of work that many of our clients do in this part of the country. Everybody works at home. And I'm not finding as many people who are laid off as you might think, or furloughed or without income.
Yeah, which is really good news, right? Because that keeps them viable as buyers and sellers.
For sure.
Karen, can you resend that? Because I don't think I got it. I've just looked through all my email.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
Thanks.
Sure.
Could you resend it to me, Karen, as well? It's Fiona. Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and what we can do is that it looks like a lot of people didn't get it, so maybe it didn't go out or it didn't get to you. We can certainly send it to everyone, right?
Yeah,
we'll have them resent. We'll have them resent.
So you might get it twice, but better twice.
Exactly right. You just have to be able to read it twice. I want you to read it all twice if you get it twice. All righty. So let's dive into step number 6 in your packet, which is close for the agreement. And so if you remember what we talked about in step number 1, which was setting the stage, the most important piece of that was getting to a disclosure that, look, this is a hiring conversation, right? So we're going to make some decisions. We're going to have conversations. We're going to consult you through a process and get to a point where we're making a decision about hiring. And oh, by the way, my script for that with buyers, I just used to add in a little something and said, you know, 1 of 3 things will happen. Either after our discussions this afternoon, you'll decide that I can meet and exceed your expectations and you'll hire me. Woohoo! Woohoo was part of my script. And then the second part was, or you may decide that we're not a great match and you may choose not to hire me, which frankly would make me sad. Or I may determine that after listening to what it is you're looking for, that I am unable to meet and exceed your needs, and I may choose to turn you down now rather than let you down later, which frankly would also make me sad, and yet I'd rather be sad for a short period of time today than have us both be miserable long term, right? And so that was kind of how I couched that script in trying to make it just a little bit more human, right? And there was the yeehaw for hire me and the boo-hoo for not hire me and the boo-hoo-ish again if for some reason I don't choose you, right? All right, so closing for the agreement. So you're now to that point where you've what else them to absolute death. They've given you every opportunity that they can think of to create a great list for their top 5 must-have list. And you have written those down on the top 5 must-have list. And really important step with the top 5 must-have list, after it's written down on that document, what are they going to do with it? They're going to sign it. It's exactly right, Bogdan. Thank you for that. They're going to sign the top 5 must-have list. Why do we ask them to sign the top 5 must-have list?
So they think it's something legal.
Exactly right? You sign important documents. And so there's no reason not to sign that document, because guess what? That thing is going to dictate the next couple of weeks of our life together. So there's no reason not to get really on purpose around having them put their signature to it, right? Now it's binding, baby. You signed it. Can they change their mind? Never. No, I'm kidding. Of course they can, right? Of course they can. And yet it's just the act of signing important documents. And then of course you're going to give them a copy. You're going to keep a copy. And I can't stress this enough. I know I said it on Friday. I'm going to say it again. Don't go through that process. Give them a copy of it. You keep a copy of it, stick it in your folder, and never look at it again. you might as well not do it. That's a document that you're working people through each and every time you meet with them. As a matter of fact, I would haul it out each and every time you meet with them. Hey, it's good to see you. Did you bring your copy of this? No worries, I made an extra copy for you. Just want you to have it in hand as we head out and see these couple of properties today. Right? Remind them every time what they said that their top 5 are. So make sure you're using it and reminding them of what they signed. All right, step number 6, close for the agreement. So let's do this. Let's have somebody read through this script. Then we're going to pick it apart and lay it over on top of the actual buyer document. But let's have somebody read it through once so we can just hear what it sounds like. Who wants to take that for us? I'm certain I'm more patient than you all are.
I'll go, Rick.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get down to the legalese portion of our meeting, Rick. As you know, it's CT state law that you and I work under agreement of written representation. After all that we've discussed this morning, can you see how it would benefit you to have somebody looking out for your best interests as you search for the best home and negotiate its purchase?
I can.
So this form allows you to officially hire me so that we can move forward with finding a home for you. It outlines all of my duties and responsibilities to you, as well as yours back to me in this partnership.
Okay.
It's also going to outline how I get paid. Now, most of the time, my compensation, it's paid by the seller through the MLS. So for all intents and purposes, you get all of my services for free. How's that sound to you, Rick?
Yeah, it sounds pretty good.
Now, there may be certain circumstances such as my showing you a for sale by owner home or a home that for some other reason or another is offering little to no compensation to the buyer's agent. In situations like those, you may be asked to pay for a portion of or the entire commission. However, we will discuss any of these homes first prior to you seeing them so that you fully understand your financial obligations. So should you choose to pursue those few exceptions. The good news is this, 98% of all the homes that we see together will not require that conversation, and you'll always have ample notice of any homes that do.
Okay.
Furthermore, this document goes on to explain that at all times, I must abide by both federal and state fair housing laws, which means I may not be able to specifically answer some of your questions. However, I'll always guide you to a resource that can. Does that make sense?
It does.
Great. So all that is left to do is sign the contract and we're off.
Excellent. Where do I sign, baby?
You made a great choice today, Rick.
I think so. Let's do it. All right. So it's not rocket science, right? I mean, it's not like the most brilliant thing ever written. And yet, do you see how it covers in a very non-threatening way the outline of what this document actually requires of people? What are your ahas from just having Chris read that through one time? What did you hear that surprised you? What did you hear that you liked? What did you hear you didn't like?
Hey, Rick, I'm glad it addressed the fact that there are times when the buyer might have to pay a commission.
Yeah.
Because I've found in the few instances that I've had with folks that they really balk at that section of the document.
Yeah, so the idea of one of the things we have to just get better and better and better at is recognizing that when sellers hire us, the sellers are responsible for our commission. Is that a true statement? Yes, it's a true statement, right? When sellers hire us, the sellers are responsible for our commission. However, many of us believe that when buyers hire us, somehow or other they are not obligated to pay our commission. And that is simply false, right? When buyers hire us, just like sellers, they are obligated to pay our commission. Much of the time, we find other ways to make that happen so that they don't have to actually write us the check at the closing table. Although I would argue it is their money that's paying the commission, right? Because they're writing the $525,000 to buy the house. So, and that's the money that's paying us. So, but I think that one of the things that we really have to do before we can really master this document and this conversation is take a mindset shift that when buyers hire us, they are responsible for paying our commission. So I see a lot of head nodding. I hope you mean it, right? Go ahead, Dee.
Maybe the mindset is really that we're worth it.
Oh yeah, that's a good point, right? That you deserve that commission, right? That you don't get to just drive people around and turn lights on and open doors for weeks on end.
And
only to have them
and go to the inspection and do all the other things and spend hours and hours and hours and hours. So after it says free, there should be haha.
Well, and what's spectacular is that the idea of this document, the way it's written, is that we get to describe a legal contract in kind of layman's terms so that it doesn't freak people out, but still communicates the important things that it has to communicate, like you're responsible for our commission, right? Yes, there may be times where it's not covered by something in the multiple listing service, and then we have to have a different conversation. And we're going to talk about exactly that scenario in just a second. I think one of the most powerful statements in this script is it also outlines how I get paid. Because you are now standing up right in front of everything and saying, oh, and by the way, I am worth a fee, and this is how it comes my way. And I think too many times, too many agents hide from that conversation. They hide from it on the listing side, hoping that if they don't bring it up, the seller might just kind of glance past that on the contract and sign the next page. So they don't bring it up on the listing contract side, and they don't bring it up here. I will tell you, I have found on both the list side and the buy side, I get far less pushback from clients who, A, I have put through a process and not skipped steps because they feel like I know what I'm talking about and they feel like they've been taken care of up until that point. So now when you ask them to make a commitment and you ask them to pay for that commitment, it's clearer to them what they're paying for, right? Instead of the idea with a buyer that they walk into your office and say, hey, it's so lovely to meet you. You know, we just have a couple of things to do from a paperwork perspective. Here are some of the houses we're going to see today. And oh, by the way, will you marry me? Right? And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Oh, you know, buy me a Diet Coke first or something, right? So be careful about be careful about making judgments about buyers wanting to commit if you're not taking all the steps to give them a reason to commit or give them the comfort to commit. Right? And we're going to talk about buyers who you do all that with, who still may not be willing to commit right away, and what you do with them also in a second. Because it's great to go through all of this stuff, but we also have to live in the real world where not everybody all the time dives in and says yes. Yes, Lori.
I think educating buyers to the fact that, because they just think going to open houses is great. But when you start explaining to them that all those conversations you have with the seller's agent, the seller is represented. You have no representation. You have no one protecting your interest. So if you've now gone to 20 open houses, if you end up making an offer on any of those houses, they have every right to use any piece of information you disclosed about your finances, your motivation, et cetera, et cetera. So I think when you try and form a partnership with them from the get-go and explain how you can protect them and help them work through this to their best advantage. That's helpful too, getting them to sign this. They see that you are of value.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, right? Because you're like their bubble wrap. You're wrapping them in bubble wrap. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you for that. So here's what I want to do. I want to, anything else you noticed about that quick script before we dive into the actual form?
Rick, I think it's got three main points. It says we're in a partnership. All of my duties and responsibilities, as well as yours, back to me. It's got what we just discussed, and then there's things I can't really touch on, but I'll point you in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. So knowing that last piece, the fair housing piece, right? You may not be able to, when they say I'm curious, is it safe here? Right? What's your opportunity there? What's the answer?
You have to point them to a resource where they can find that information.
Exactly right. And so for safety, what might that resource be?
City or town websites or et cetera. Something.
So something on the web with safety. I might say, you know what? Let's drive past the police department. We can walk on in. You can ask whatever questions you might have about a specific neighborhood or about a specific town, city, right? Schools, same kind of thing, right? You need to be the resource and not the opinion person. I can remember working with buyers, when I was working with buyers in Ridgefield, we have 6 elementary schools in Ridgefield, and people used to ask all the time, which one's the best? Like, which one's the best elementary school so we can buy in that district? And my answer was, you know what, I am happy to guide you to some information that kind of gives test results and whatnot. And let me say this, I have friends and clients who live in each of those 6 elementary school districts, and each one of them will arm wrestle you to the ground to make the point that theirs is the best. So if that's helpful, right? So I didn't give my opinion about which one I thought was the best. I kind of gave an opinion about the people that I know, each thinking that theirs was the best. So therefore, everyone must have a high opinion about the district as a whole. And yet, for real data, let's drive you either to a website, or we can stop by the superintendent's office and you can ask some questions there, or get some pamphlets, or get some info. Right? It's not for you to start having conversations around schools or safety or those kinds of things. I'll give you a quick example. About 2 years ago, it was not a buyer of mine, it was someone in the market center that I was assisting. And this particular buyer had a son who needed a very specific baseball program in his high school in order to qualify for something that he would go to after he graduated. And so the question was asked, does the school systems we're seeing, you know, I don't know what they were, it was kind of northern Fairfield County, Ridgefield, Reading, maybe Newtown, school systems, do they have this program? And so the question came back to me, said, do those towns have that program? I have no idea. like not a clue. I never even heard of that program before. So I encouraged them to talk to the superintendent's office and ask that very specific question, so that someone inside of the school districts that they were considering purchasing in could answer the question. And what they found out was none of the districts up in northern Fairfield County had that available. They needed to purchase down either in Westport or Fairfield, I forget, one of those districts had that specific program. And so that's where they ended up buying a house, right? Think about the issue that could have caused to simply say, oh, you know, we have a great school district, I'm sure they have all of those things, right? Or making an assumption, or giving kind of a half answer instead of let's really dive in and make sure that you get the answer that you need. The other thing I'll ask you to do is not be the person who's gathering all the info and then delivering it back to the buyer. Anybody ever play the telephone game? Right? And so on my screen, it's funny because on my screen, I have like bookended trombas. And I see they're like literally sitting back to back in their house, right? So Kim's in my upper left-hand corner. Yeah, there's Mike. Kim's in my upper left-hand corner and Mike's in my lower right-hand corner. And so the point I'm making is if I tell Kim something in the upper left-hand corner and she goes all the way through all the boxes and then Mike tells me back what I told Kim, how different is the information? Right? It's got to get through 20 other people before it gets back to me. So just remember that telephone game and know that when you're the one who is gathering the data and then interpreting it, you can't help but interpret it when you deliver the information back. It's one thing if information was left at a town hall office and you went and picked it up and scanned it in and sent it to them. Because now the town hall is speaking directly to the buyer via those documents. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when they say, can we put a pool in on this property? And you go to town hall and talk to the health department and the zoning department, gather the information, and then go back to the buyer and say, you know what, I talked to zoning and I talked to the health department and it looks like you'll be fine. And then they buy the house because of that representation that you made. The people in the municipal offices didn't make that representation to them. You did. For right or for wrong, for good or for bad, that came from you. So I really, really encourage you to, I know you think you're doing them a favor. I know that they don't live here and it's easy for you to kind of stop in at town hall and ask a question. Well, not now, it's not. But you know, when things are normal again, right? I know it's easier for you. Please resist that urge. There's a script that you've heard me say before that I want to say again, because if you've never heard me say it before, please write it down. And if you have heard me say it before and you don't use it, please write it down. And that is outside of the scope of what I'm licensed to assist you with. Right? That is outside of the scope of what I'm licensed to assist you with. And there are some things that are just outside of the scope of where you can assist. I know it feels good to help, and yet sometimes you're not really helping them. And you're certainly not helping you if, in fact, you're gathering information and passing it on. You know how I know that a large percentage of our real estate agents have this burning desire to help their clients? Here's how I know that. Because one of the most popular answers that I give in any given day or week, week after week after week, is, you know, that's a great question. They should ask their attorney. I probably say that twice a day, every single week. Either via text or on phone. Great question. They should probably get some guidance from their attorney. Because we have this desire to want to help. Someone asks a question about a contract or about an extension or about a mortgage or about a this or about a that. Well, we have a team of people around us that are experts in those fields. Don't feel like the only way you have validity is by knowing all the answers. Because I will tell you, that is a sinking ship. You don't know all the answers, and you never will know all the answers. And I will tell you, as someone who really thought that doing this job well was about knowing all the answers, it drives you a little insane. You've got to learn to kind of step back and let go of some of that and know that you have go-to people. Right? Do I know how mortgages work? Sure. Am I an expert in them? I am absolutely not. And you know what? I am so grateful for people like Karen because I don't have to be. I don't have to fill up my brain with all the things that Karen fills up her brain with. Instead, I just use Karen as a resource. Sometimes at all hours of the day and night, right, Karen? But the point is, when you have talented people around you, you don't have to know everything. And it's, as a matter of fact, you shouldn't know everything. Right? You shouldn't know everything because you become like jack of all trades, master of none. I'd rather you be really clear about what you do know and then parse out what you don't know to your teammates. All right, why are we on this bunny trail? It's a good bunny trail, but it's a bunny trail. Okay, so let's do this. Oh, we're perfectly timed. Let's do this. Let's run through the exclusive right to represent buyer document. And here's why I want to do that. I want you to hear what it really says, right? Now, some of you, it'll be fun because some of you have been using this for years and you've never actually read every single line. So we're going to go through it to make sure that you know what every single line says and how you would explain every single line and why every single line is important for the buyer. And then we're going to take this script and lay it on top of this again so you can see how it all kind of fits together. So I'll go through the form for us, right? It starts with number 1, the exclusive right. The buyer appoints Keller Williams Realty as the exclusive agent for the purpose of assisting buyer to acquire an interest in suitable real estate acceptable to buyer. What goes in that blank? Not a trick question.
Buyer's name.
The buyer's name, exactly right, right? And if it's a couple, then both of the buyer's names. If it's the couple and his mother is helping them out with a down payment and she expects to be on either the mortgage or the deed, well, then guess what? It's all 3 of their names, right? You want to make sure that anyone involved in the process and who may be on the documentation is covered by your client representation agreement. Number 2, geographic area. This appointment can be limited by the buyer to the following area of the state of Connecticut. What goes in there?
Town.
Say it again.
The towns.
Towns, right? Towns. Town by town by town by town by town. Or
can we put the counties?
Address by address by address by address. What I'd like you to steer clear of is describing the territory by county.
Oh.
And here's why. Let's do a little test. Some of you know the answers to this test. So if you know the answers to this test specifically, don't spoil it for everyone else. Donna. So, is Stratford a part of Fairfield County?
Yes. Yes.
Right, so I have some yeses. I have some people shaking their heads very vehemently no. All right, let's go to a different one. Is Sherman a part of Fairfield County?
No. No.
Yeah, so a lot of no's with some vehement yeses. Okay, so here's the point I'm looking to make. If you sit down with a buyer and write in Fairfield County, and collectively as a group who live and work here, we can't come up with a clear answer as to whether or not either of those towns is actually in Fairfield County or not. How fair is it to someone who's coming in from Des Moines, Iowa, to sign a representation agreement that says that they're covered for all of Fairfield County when they don't? How could they possibly be held accountable to knowing what towns are in Fairfield County? By the way, both Sherman and Stratford are in Fairfield County. They are 2 of the 3 triangle points, the 3rd triangle point being Greenwich, right? You've got Greenwich, you've got Sherman in the north, and you've got Stratford in the east. Those are the 3 triangle points of Fairfield County. So you get my point? So steer clear of Fairfield County. The courts have, there is precedent in the courts that says that is a reason to rule in favor of a buyer instead of the brokerage if we ever had to use this document to grab a commission, right? Because we weren't clear with the towns that we were looking to represent. So write in town by town by town or address by address by address. Either works. Steer clear of counties.
Rick.
Yes.
Does something have to be put there?
So great question. The simple answer from a validity perspective is if that particular line is left blank, you now have a representation agreement that is valid for the entire state of Connecticut, right? Because of the way it's written. This appointment can be limited to the following area. And so if it's not limited, that just means that you represent them now in the entire state. However, is that reasonable?
No.
It's not reasonable, right? It's not reasonable. You're not experts in Tolland County, right? If I asked you to show me schools in Brooklyn, would you know about schools in Brooklyn? I don't mean Brooklyn, New York. I mean Brooklyn, Connecticut. Did you even know there was a Brooklyn, Connecticut? Right? So just recognize that trapping people inside of an agreement that's for the entire state is not in their best interest. And so you need to be an expert where you are an expert, right? Now, when I was still working with buyers, there were a couple of times where people would ask me to drive them up to New Milford. Now, I didn't know the first thing about New Milford. I mean, I kind of knew where it was, but I didn't really know anything. And so I very clearly said to them, look, that is outside of the area of my expertise. I can find you an agent who has an expertise there. And they said, no, we don't want you to refer us. We want you. I said, okay, so here's the deal we'll make. I'll be happy to go up and show you property in New Milford. However, two things are going to happen. Number one, you need to be really clear that I don't know where stuff is. And so you're the navigator. So I'm going to hand you a map. This is, of course, dating me now because this is when we still worked off of maps, right? We didn't have GPS or in our phones or even GPS in our cars, right? Yes, it was 1958, and we were proud to have those Hagstrom maps driving around New Milford, right? And the second thing I made them swear about was when you ask me a question about schools or about town government or about areas or neighborhoods, and I say, I have no idea, you won't be upset. Because here's what I want you to understand. New Milford is like 45 minutes north of here, at least parts of it are, right? And I don't want to get all the way up there and have you be irritated. So that was the deal I made with them, and then I went and showed them, right? But for the most part, I kept it within a territory that I had expertise in. Number 3, term of agreement. Begins on blank, ends on blank. What are you putting in there? What's the basic time period?
6 months.
6 months.
Right, so anywhere from 3 to 6 months. I would encourage you, some of you are not going to like this, but I would encourage you to start shortening those time periods. I think you send the wrong message to your buyer when you ask them to sign an agreement for 6 months. I think the message you're sending there is, hey, this is going to take a long time for you to find a house. So let's buckle in and make sure that we have this long period of time in our agreement. I would rather sign an agreement for 3 months and be clear that this gives us about 4 weeks or so to find a property that is suitable for you, plus covers us for the 45 to 60 day closing period. I would rather set that expectation right up front that we're not going to be doing this 5.5 months from now. Like, shoot me now. That's not part of the script, by the way. The shoot me now part. But do you see how by doing it for 6 months, you're kind of sending mixed signals? You're going to be using some scripts that I'll give you a little later on that sets an expectation that we're going to find a home quickly, and yet we're asking them to sign for this enormous period of time. Here's the thing. If you're doing your job well, and for some reason they don't find something in the first 30 or 45 days, well, then you can extend it. You just have a meeting and you have an extension process, just like a listing, right? But I think I would rather set the tone that this is going to be short, sweet, and really successful than give them the idea that we need this huge amount of time to get the job done. Just a thought. All right, let's dive through the rest of this. Broker's duties. So the broker agrees to attempt to locate a property acceptable to the buyer, negotiate on buyer's behalf, and act in the buyer's best interest. Not anything out of the ordinary. It's what you would expect to be in there, right? Any questions on number 4? Number 5, buyer's duties. Buyer agrees to tell the broker about all past and current contacts, utilize broker exclusively, cooperate with the broker and be available to examine real property, give broker financial and personal info, and schedule all appointments to see a property through the broker. So number 5 just outlines again the basic duties of the buyer back to us, right? So this is a bilateral contract. It means there are duties back and forth. It also means that both parties need to agree to put it in place, and both parties need to agree to terminate it. Any questions on number 5? I want to just point out 5A. There's a reason it's in big bold print, right? One of their obligations is to tell the broker about all past and current contacts with any real property or any other real estate agents. I had someone probably a year or 18 months ago who came to me and said, I have an issue. I was sitting with a buyer and we got to this part of the contract and she got really, really angry and was kind of yelling at me saying, you know, why do I have to tell you about my past contacts with properties or people? That's none of your business. Who are you people? You know, you people, my favorite phrase on the planet. And I said, oh, I'm sorry that you had that issue. What did you answer? And what was said to me was, you know what, I didn't have an answer. And so I asked if it was okay if she spoke with you. I thought, okay, well, that's probably not the best path forward here in terms of you not having an answer, right? I'm happy to see if I can reach down to the toilet and pull this one out for you. And we did do that, right? I had a conversation with the woman, and it's that conversation that I want to repeat to you because I think it's a really important one. The woman called me and I said, you know, how can I help? And she said, well, I was sitting getting ready to hire one of your agents, and this document was put in front of me, and it asked me to tell all about my past experiences, and I just don't see how that's any of anyone's business. And she started to get a little hot under the collar again, and I said, oh my goodness, you know, thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. I'm curious, do you have any idea why we might ask that question? And I can guarantee you it's not to pry or be nosy. Do you have any idea why we might ask that question? And she said, no. And I said, well, we asked that question to ensure that by going into business with us, you do not put yourself in danger financially or otherwise because of any other conversations you may have had about another property with another real estate brokerage. So we asked that question to protect you moving forward and for no other reason. Does that make sense? And she said, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then she asked a question that is the reason I tell this story. She followed up with, why didn't your agent know the answer to that? And I will tell you, I'm not often at a loss for words. I wasn't quite sure how to answer that one, right? Because I didn't want to throw the agent under the bus. And yet the real answer is, great question. Like, you've got to read the document you're putting in front of people and understand that they might have questions around it. It's actually a pretty simple answer because this document is used to protect buyers. It's not used to protect your commission primarily. It's used to protect the rights and benefits of your buyers. It also happens to protect your commission, right? So that's another mindset shift that we have to take to help be more objective about what this document is really saying. All right, number 6.
Hey, Rick, can I ask a question about that?
Of course, of course.
So just so I'm clear, they have a contact with a previous broker that maybe they signed an agreement with that other broker. You're saying that it could be the case that they have to pay you personally out of pocket because that other broker is going to be paid from the seller under that previous agreement?
Yeah, in certain circumstances, if they have two buyer brokers because they have two agreements, the MLS is only paying one of them. And so they run the risk of putting themselves in financial jeopardy because a commission would be due, right? I'm working with one of these right now, right? Commission is due. And the tough part is that most people don't just volunteer the $15,000 or $20,000 they owe us when they cheat. And so then we have to pursue them. And the struggle is finding attorneys who will actually work via contingency and agree to, a third of the winnings, if there are any winnings. I will tell you that I've gone after a bunch of buyers in 21 years. We've only actually gone to court once. It's only actually made it as far as a courtroom one time. And even that time, we settled. It never got in front of a judge. I kind of wish it had, because I'd love some precedent on some of this, that a judge says, you know what, you signed a document, you cheated, sorry. Write a check. But it never got there, right? It never got there. So yeah, that is the issue, John.
Thank you.
Number 6, let's run through 6. So 6A says, buyer agrees that the broker may represent other buyers and show other buyers the same property that the broker shows to this buyer. Buyer needs to realize that if any of the firm's buyer clients have interest in a particular property, that information is considered to be confidential and will not be disclosed to any other clients. So 6A outlines the fact that I may be working with 2 sets of buyers who are looking in the exact same town and price range at the exact same time. I may have buyer A out on Sunday morning to look at 3 properties, and I may have buyer B out on Sunday afternoon looking at the exact same 3 properties. When that happens, what do you disclose to either buyer? Nothing is exactly right. Some of you are giving me all of the hand signals for Zippo, right? You disclose nothing. And what's fascinating to me is that I have this, every time this happens, we get to have the conversation where agents will call and say, so I have these 2, I've already disclosed to them that I have somebody else who's in the same price range. And they're like, no, why are you doing that? Right? The second you have those conversations, you're breaching confidentiality on one party or the other, right? And so the question that gets asked is, well, what happens if both of them make an offer on the same house? Does that happen? Yes, it absolutely happens, right? And so now you're the buyer's agent with 2 different buyers on the same property at the same time. What disclosure do you have now to those buyers? So I see a lot of shaking heads that we have no disclosure opportunity. Okay, so let me ask this then. Now there's multiple offers, right? So are we disclosing to the buyers that there's multiple offers? See, now I've got you, because some of you are nodding your head up and down. And you should have kept going like this. There's something very specific that has to happen before you can go back to those buyers and disclose multiple offers to them. What has to happen?
Ask permission.
You have to ask the listing agent if she has multiple offers.
That's exactly right, right? So if Donna's the listing agent and I'm representing 2 buyers and I give her both of these offers, I actually have to ask her, Donna, do me a favor. Can you tell me officially that there are now multiple offers? And Donna looks at me and says, are you high? What is wrong with you? You just handed me 2 offers. Except the only way that I can go back to either of those buyers and tell them that there's another offer on the table is if it comes from the seller through the listing agent. So I have to actually have Donna ask the seller if she can disclose to me that there are now multiple offers, so I can go back to each of the buyers and say, guess what, multiple offers. Until then, the fact that I know that the other one exists is completely confidential to the other. And you can't cross those lines. It's really, really important distinction. Make sense? 6B, broker may share and disclose non-confidential information with other agents who offer real property for sale. How do you know what's confidential versus non-confidential? I'll give you a hint. Just treat it all as confidential. And then you don't have to keep two lists. Anything your buyer tells you before you disclose it to the listing agent, even if you think it's completely innocent, ask permission. Ask permission, ask permission, ask permission. I had somebody recently who called me and said, hey, I just bought a house through your office and I used so-and-so as the agent and I thought she was awesome. There's just one thing I wanted to bring to your attention. And I said, oh, great, what? And she said, and he said, so I kind of felt like she dropped the ball in terms of disclosing confidential information. I thought, okay, what a weird setup to have that be the issue, because that's kind of a big issue, right? And I said, well, I'm curious, can you give me more background on that? And he said, sure, she wrote a cover letter for our offer. And in it, she described my wife and I as Mr. and Dr. Maria Jones. He said, and frankly, I would have preferred that my wife's title of doctor not be used in the cover letter, because it could well have put us at a negative negotiating position because people think doctors make tons of money. And I heard it and I thought to myself, you know what? I can't disagree with that. He's 100% right. Right. And he said, look, I don't want to make a big deal out of it because I don't really think it did put us at a negative negotiating position. We purchased the house. Everything's great. I love, so-and-so, whoever the agent was. It's just been in the back of my head and I thought you should know about it. And it's funny because ever since I had that conversation with him, whenever I have conversations about this document or teach this course, I retell his story because it's a perfect example of something that seems innocent. And I'm certain that either the listing agent the buyer's agent did one of two things. Either didn't even think, it's just how it was written on the form, right? They are just Mr. and Dr. Jones, or thought, you know what? This shows that they're a professional couple, and I think it can boost their opportunity as buyers for the house. So I'm sure there was no malicious intent there, and yet he did feel like she had crossed the line in terms of breaching confidences. So just know that treat everything as confidential, and then ask for it all before you disclose it. 6C. Buyer understands that this is an exclusive appointment and that it will supersede any opens that are out there. Skip to the bottom. Buyer agrees not to enter into another exclusive agreement with any other broker unless this agreement has terminated, right? So 6C kind of goes hand in hand with 5A. It says, please don't cheat, right? It puts you in harm's way. You could put you in financial jeopardy if you cheat. 6D, this agreement may be terminated if the agreement expires. The buyer and broker agree to terminate in writing prior to expiration. The broker also reserves the right to reassign the contract to somebody else in the office or elect to refer the contract to another company. So 6D, it basically says, other than expiration, we have to have agreement before any changes can be made. Right? So let me ask you this question. Can you be fired? Not unilaterally, you can't. And what that means is we have to agree. And so if a buyer says, you know what, thank you so much, but I'm done, I want to move on, we have to agree with that termination. And generally speaking, we don't agree with that termination, and instead, to protect at least a portion of your commission, we will reassign to another agent in the market center. Very rarely do we release to the outside for a referral fee, but that is another opportunity. And it's all spelled out pretty clearly in 6D, right, what the deal is. 6E, this agreement may be modified, waived, or discharged by a written agreement between the parties only. Make sense? All right. So flip over to the second page. I want to run through 7 really, really quickly, and then we're going to pick it up on Wednesday. But I want you to hear this before we finish, because this is the part that sometimes trips people up. So 7 talks about compensation, right? It talks about our professional service fee, because as we talked about, the buyer is obligated to pay this professional service fee, and here's how and when. 7A says the buyer agrees that the broker is entitled to the fee if, during the original term or any extension thereof, the buyer enters into a contract to purchase, purchases, or acquires a property acceptable to the buyer. If the buyer attempts to avoid the obligation, then the buyer shall be obligated to pay the professional service fee. So all 7A says is we are due a fee, and you're responsible for it. That's what 7A says. 7B, broker's professional service fee shall be 3% of the purchase price. If the amount offered through the MLS is less, we may elect to reduce our fee. And if the buyer wishes to purchase a for sale by owner or something not listed on the MLS, the broker's fee for that service is 5%. So 7A says we're due a fee. 7B quantifies it. It just tells the buyer what our fee is. And that's either 3 or 5%, or something else that we elect to reduce to if the amount offered through the multiple listing service is less than that 3. 7C, the broker will make every effort to obtain the professional service fee from the seller, the listing agent, the buyer broker fee, from the MLS, from the Easter Bunny, from Santa Claus, from my great-grandmother, or any other place that one might look, including structured within an offer to purchase from the proceeds of a sale. Right, so 7A says we're due a fee, 7B quantifies it, and 7C says we're going to look almost everywhere else before we look to you. 7D, if broker receives a fee from any of the above sources in excess of the amount stated in this agreement, i.e. a bonus, right? Every once in a while bonuses are offered, right? For example, say you're showing 123 Main Street, and 123 Main Street has a bonus clause that says if this property is under agreement before April 30th, the buyer's brokerage will receive an extra $5,000. And you put the deal together tomorrow, right? It's sometimes used as an incentive. I think it's a silly incentive, and yet it is sometimes used as an incentive. And so 7D says if that shows up, that we can keep it, right? It's just authorization, pre-authorization for us to receive bonuses. 7E, the professional service fees due no later than the date on which title to real property transfers. So basically 7E says we get paid at the closing. So 7A says we're entitled to a fee. 7B quantifies the fee. 7C says we'll look almost everywhere else before we look to you. 7D says we may keep any bonuses, and 7E says we get paid at the closing. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to end for the evening. We're going to end right there, right? Because when we start on Wednesday, I want to start here again and really overlap the script that we read through, that Chris read through, to make sure you understand exactly how this dovetails together, most specifically about how we get paid. Because there's a conversation to be had about working with buyers to cover gaps in commission that far too many of us still don't have conversations with our buyers around. And I'd like to encourage you to be brave enough to do that and give you the scripts to help you have those conversations. We'll also talk a little bit about fair housing on Wednesday, and then finish up with the anatomy of a buyer transaction, all in 89 minutes. So with that, unless there are any questions, we will finish tonight. I wish you a fond farewell. Have a lovely evening. We'll see you tomorrow morning bright and early at 9 o'clock. Let me know if you have any questions.
Hey, Rick.
See you soon.
Rick.
Yes.
Hi, it's Raquel. I have a question. So it says here that on the buyer agreement that the fee is 3%, right?
Correct.
But a lot of the fees that are, or the commission usually given to realtors, or that I see, is 2.5.
Correct.
So are we asking them for the 0.5 difference or no?
So great question, and we are going to start there on Wednesday. It's about a 10-minute explanation, Raquel, and a 10-minute conversation, which we just ran out of time for. So hold that till Wednesday, and we're going to start right there. If you could be in charge of reminding me that question, we will dive right in at 5:30. At 5 o'clock and on Wednesday, and answer that question up for you, including some scripts to help.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. All right, guys, have a great night. Take care.